Action.
Action. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Can you all hear me okay? Yes. Yes? Can you all hear me okay now? Yes. Yes? Okay, I'm not going to use it then. So it's glad to see you, Nan, over here. And it's going to be a tough talk after his talk. So a lot of disappointing things in here, but bear with me. That's why we have these problems, and we want to solve them. How many of you know boxwoods or deal with boxwoods? No, don't be shy. If you live in Louisiana, you have a boxwood somewhere, right? Yeah. Yes? Good. How many of you have seen this problem? Yes. See, I told you. So this is a new disease. There is another well-known disease called Phytophthora root rot. Okay? And this is for boxwood diabetes. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this disease because it is spreading, and it is spreading at an alarming rate. So for any boxwoods that you will buy or put in the garden, it is susceptible to this problem, maybe even the baby gems. You all remember Illinois? He's retired now, but he's still alive, but you all remember him, right? Yes? Okay, so he got mad at me one time because he told me that baby gems are not susceptible to this disease. Second sample he sent to me, I sent him the report. I said, this is boxwood dieback. And he got, Raj, are you spreading this disease? And I said, no. I'm not. But this disease is spreading, okay? A few years ago, we thought this is a foliar disease, okay? That means it can only spread foliar, like on through those pruning tools or your cutting practices, all those kind of things. But now what we have found is that it is a systemic disease, okay? If you see those symptoms, don't cut into the dead part here, okay? You have to find a branch next to that dead one, take a sharp knife and cut the bark off or remove the bark, and then you can see this dark black discoloration underneath that bark. That is a diagnostic characteristic of this problem, okay? Phytophthora root rot will not cause that. It will cause the lower stem of that affected plant to turn dull brown, okay? And you will also see some sloughing of the bark at the base if you have Phytophthora root rot. So this is just to show you that it goes into the woody tissue of that infected plant. It can produce those spores on those affected stems, okay? Those are the spores, and this is kind of interesting. Those spores are sticky in nature. So when you are using those gas-powered pruners or anything to prune those, they got stuck to that pruner, and when you go to the next plant, healthy plant, you're going to spread it. That's the foliar spread of it. Also, if you're doing the overhead irrigation or the sprinkler is hitting that affected plant, those spores are going to dislodge and they're going to spread by water splash, okay? So those are two ways that you can spread this disease. Now, when we did the artificial inoculation of this disease in the greenhouse, it took us about 3 months to see the symptoms. Okay? From infection to those symptoms that I just showed you, the tangled foliage. So even if you buy a healthy boxwood from anywhere and you bring it into your garden or any landscape, there is high probability that you might get the disease. So that's the third pathway that disease can enter your landscape. So this is the example that Alan sent me a sample. 3 months in that landscape, newly built house, everything was new, no boxwoods were there, and those baby gems were infected, pre-infected with the disease when they came in. Okay, but it took 3 months to see those symptoms. Now, this is from a nursery, okay, here in Louisiana. And believe it or not, Rapides Parish, a lot of nurseries have positive boxwood dieback material in their blocks. They're trying to take care of it, but it's going to take a long time. Now you can see here, that's the initial symptoms, okay? The light green foliage. So you won't get that tan color foliage after like three months, but you can start seeing this within a month or 4 weeks, okay? Once you notice that, again, do the same thing, go to that branch, and remove the bark, you will see that black discoloration underneath it. So what's new on this disease? Why I'm trying to emphasize the importance of this disease, we knew that this is a foliar spread of the disease, like pruning, cutting, and all that. But now what we have here is evidence that it can also transmit through the roots. Okay? That's very bad for a landscape. All right? And here is the proof that you can see very little tangled foliage here on the top. But when you look at the base of that plant, you can see that black discoloration already inside the plant system. Before this happened, my recommendations were that you remove that symptomatic plant. Okay? You should be okay because it's not soil-bound. This changes everything. Okay? This changes everything because now you have to remove this plant, and by the time you start seeing symptoms on the farther plants, they're already infected with it because those boxwoods, the roots are kind of cross-grafting with each other. Okay? So my graduate student, she's doing some research on it where we bought those big 25-gallon pots, and we put one inoculated plant in the center, and we put several around it, which were asymptomatic. And she's already found that those asymptomatics that were not inoculated, they're already showing the symptoms. We didn't prune them, we didn't do anything, it's the root-to-root transmission. Now, to put fuel to the fire, if that is happening, some of the houses I have seen, those boxwoods, you will see one here, one there, one there, one there. This is just an example. There was this big house, about 200 boxwoods around it. And those boxwoods are not cheap, $29.99 a piece. You do the math. Okay? Now, interesting thing is going to happen, that's my professional experience, that if it stays in the roots, it can also stay in the soil, on the dirt. That's going to make it even more important when it comes to management of this disease. Okay? So if it stays in the soil, we don't know how long it can stay in the soil. So previous recommendations, they are ineffective now because if it is staying in the soil and I recommend you to put another boxwood in the same site, what's going to happen? Right? It's going to get that disease. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to see how far it can go. Okay? At the same time, we're trying to do some fungicide efficacy in the nursery right now. So we will see, hopefully we'll have some chemistries that will improve the landscape with those applications. Okay? But it's going to be preventative. Once you have this disease in the boxwoods, there is no way that you can reverse it and make it green. You may paint it green, but it's not going to happen. So this is the same example where it's producing those spores. Okay? So it is staying in that affected plant material. So what we did over here, that we dug those stumps out, okay, that was about a year old when they were removed. Okay? So the plants were removed a year before we dug those. And you can see it is present on the upper stem, it is present in the crown, present at 2 inches, present at 2 to 4 inches. So that's how the boxwood roots are maybe up to 6 inches, the way we prune them, right? We keep them small and those roots are going to be there. So if your boxwoods have longer root system, a lot of fibrous roots, they are going to be the most efficient pathway from disease to healthy plant. Okay? This is the current distribution in the US. I have Florida here, should not disclose it, but nobody is from here from Florida, right? Oh, US. Well, I'm from Florida too. I went to US as well. But no, you're not going to go back to UF, right? No. Okay. So the reason I have that as light orange, is it light orange? Anyways, light color, right? I can tell colors. I'm not colorblind, but I can tell. My 2 daughters, they can tell colors, differentiate. So we received infected plant material, we cultured it out, we We did a DNA extraction on it, we sequenced it, like you can do the sequence DNA analysis on it, and we proved that they have it. They don't want to disclose it, but they have that problem there too. These two states, they just confirmed it that they also have boxwood dieback, and we have some suspected from California too. Okay, so it is spreading, I would say, more effectively than our Phytophthora root rot. Okay? And I'll show you some of the examples of that too. How do you manage it? Okay, this is more kind of a general management, trying to keep your boxwoods healthy. But people have asked me question, if it goes to boxwoods, can it go to other closely related species like AgCenter? We don't know yet. And as a scientist, I can't take this disease and put it on AgCenter to prove that it can go to AgCenter. Okay, I have to find it on AgCenter before I can test it. Okay, so in the nurseries, don't use the potting mix again. If you have those infected plant materials, don't use that. Okay, don't put that in your cow piles. That's very important. Remember, it can produce those spores. Those stumps were a year old in the ground that we got cow heartworm from those stumps. Okay. Unfortunately, no resistance. The only plant that showed some resistance, or I would say less susceptibility to this problem, was the little missy. But if you like boxwoods, you won't like little missy. Okay? There's a reason behind that. Because that plant stayed this big for 2 years in my greenhouse. It did not grow. Okay? And the color is dull colored. And have you heard about boxwood blight disease? Yes. Okay? It's also a little less susceptible to that problem too. So there is some genes in that cultivar that it still got symptoms on it, but it took double the time for it to show the symptoms. Okay? But if seriously, if you like the bright, dark green color of boxwood, you won't like little missy at all. I always kind of joke about this disease. This is one of my most favorite diseases here in Louisiana. Okay? And there is a reason behind that you can't do anything about it. Okay? All you have to tell the landscaper that you have to take it out or leave it there. And this is, the pathogen is the largest pathogen in the world. Okay? There were some forests in Oregon and California that this disease took them out. Okay? It can have that network in the roots in the ground as rhizomes that can spread from root to root transmission. Okay? Very easy to diagnose. Very easy to diagnose. This is, I've been living on campus for 16 years and I can't name those lakes. So there are several lakes on campus, and on this side there is this Lord Cook Hotel and the Alumni Center. And this oak was in front of, it's gone now. This oak was in front of that hotel and it died overnight. Okay? So don't be surprised if people tell you that my tree died overnight. This can kill it. Okay? Within about 1 to 2 months, depending upon the size of the tree and age of the tree. Okay? But it can kill those big live oak trees as well. When you remove the bark, especially from the base near the sward line, you will see this white mycelium underneath it. Okay? That's your telltale sign that you have armillaria root rot. If you're still not convinced, smell that piece of bark. It will smell just like mushrooms. Okay? That means you have armillaria root rot. It has a wide host range. It goes to everything that has a woody stem to it. It is a host for this disease. Okay? This is a bottle brush. You can see the mycelium, the fan-shaped mycelium. This was about 3 feet in the ground on that trunk. Okay? And it girdles the sap layer, and that's it. You can't save it or undo it. Italian cypress. I don't know why we have Italian cypress in Louisiana. I have no idea. Okay. Seriously, I I put an Italian cypress in front of my house, okay? But I planted it in a way that it has good air movement around it, but I'm struggling to keep it alive. I was a little careless. I said, nothing is going to happen to it, and then spider mites took over it. Okay? But you can see all trees are gone by now. Okay? It's from root to root transmission. And this is your camellia, and you can see the white mycelium underneath. This is a story behind this. There was a big live oak tree next to this camellia, and that live oak had some significance to the owners, and they wanted to save that live oak. So they took this out, but they dug a trench. Okay? They dug a trench and lined it with like those ground cloth cover to stop the rhizomes moving in that oak direction. Okay. I did not follow up on that procedure, but that's one of the way that you can stop it if you find it early stages. Okay. Mushrooms, like I said, so you can see when they first emerge from the ground, they're very small. That's a quarter coin over there. Okay, but within like 2 weeks, they will get that big, like that globe shape. And this is a cluster of mushrooms. So if you have a heavy downpour and you start seeing some of the single mushrooms here and there in your backyard, that's not armillaria rubra. Okay? And we also call them honey-colored mushrooms, but they have to be in a cluster. So they have one big cluster, and then there's like a tree of mushrooms on those. By the way, these are edible mushrooms, but don't eat them, okay? Buy them from the grocery store, because you can eat all mushrooms, but some only once. Another problem in this area that we are seeing a lot is bacterial leaf spot. Very, very important disease. It also has a very wide host range. Okay? And it is a bacterial disease. The bacterium stays in the xylem channel where the water is flowing. Water nutrients are flowing. So what happens when the infection starts, the parenchyma cells of that xylem channel, it clogs those xylem channels so that it trying to prevent it from moving to another point. And when it does that, it cuts the water supply, and then you start seeing these symptoms of leaf spot. So other things, just like lack of water that we are seeing right now, you will see that kind of scorch all over the canopy because it's just lack of water. In this case, the symptoms will be random in the canopy, not the entire canopy. But after several years, if you don't take care of it, then you will have that entire canopy look like that. Okay? Like I said, it has a wide host range. It causes this marginal chlorosis. Chlorosis is yellowing. Okay, that's how the lack of water starts. And then it causes that necrosis, that death of the tissue. Okay? It is transmitted by a sharpshooter. When I say lack of water, I had this sweet olive plant in my greenhouse in this big container for about 2 years. I couldn't save it. I tried to water it twice a week, but it didn't do well on me. Okay? A lot of leaf defoliation occurred, and then poor plant died. This is the culprit. This is the glossy wing sharpshooter. Okay? Very efficient. There are other things like the leaf hoppers and the spittle bugs can also transmit it. But this is the most efficient vector of this disease. You need only 1 or 2 bugs for it to transfer from disease to healthy plants. Now, remember I said just lack of water. In this case, you have high sodium in your irrigation water. So the soil is getting accumulated at those edges, and you start seeing that marginal necrosis. But this marginal necrosis, if you compare these 2 leaves of same size, same shape, it will be uniform in symptoms, mirror image of each other. So like somebody painted that. It won't be irregular symptoms. And this is also, it was a high soil pH in this case. This is one of the diseases that you can witness here in Louisiana. It started here in New Orleans, in City Park, called lethal bronzing. There is a sister disease of this strain called lethal yellowing that is also spreading. There is not much difference in the symptoms, okay? But there are 2 different strains of phytoplasma. These, like bacterial leaf spot, this is transmitted, it's a phytoplasma like bacteria, but it stays in the flowing channels of that pond, okay? all palms are susceptible to this problem, but we have seen when we did a survey here in Orleans, Jefferson, Bernard Parish, that the cabbage palms, okay, sable palmetto, the only ugly palm that looks like other than other palms, is native to our Gulf states, okay? So that's the only palm that we saw very little symptoms on it, but it is not susceptible, it is less susceptible. How many of you like Chinese windmill palms? Yes? No? No? You don't like palms? I don't know why we grow palms here in Louisiana, right? So, when we had that big freeze, right, 2021 freeze, the only palms that survived was your Chinese windmill palm, right?
Yeah.
Or the sable palm, cabbage palmetto, right? Or sable palmetto. But unfortunately, we reported a new host in the entire world for the first time in Baton Rouge. Can you imagine? Okay. In Baton Rouge. So, what do those Chinese windmill palms look like now? That's the Chinese windmill palm, and you can see the entire canopy is dead. It's not coming back. Now, do you think if you cut this palm over here, it will grow back? I have seen those in a hope that they will sprout back. No, palms are monocots. They are like your sweet corn plant. Okay? They are not trees, so we call them stems, okay? But initial symptoms, the drooping of the lower canopy, and this is from Baton Rouge. These were planted in 1977, so these were older, mature palms. They were not brought in recently, okay? But now what happened, this is the Baton Rouge Clinic on Perkins Lane. They had a lot of those palms, and all those palms are gone. By the way, once the spear leaf is dead, the palm is dead. Cutting that crown at the top is not going to bring it back. A lot of people in Baton Rouge did that. There's still those tall stems standing, nothing happening to them. Okay? And this is interesting. Anybody from Jefferson Park and Flower Department here? No? Okay, then I can say it. What do you have over here? Old Native Island date palms, right? What do you have in the background? New Mexican fan palms, recently planted. Okay? And what's happening to them? They are also positive for this disease. I know, I tried to change the orientation of this one. It doesn't fit like that. But we tested this one. You can see already the yellowing of the lower foliage. And we tested this. And I have a witness here in the back room, Dr. Joe Willis, who brought me here, and we tested them. And these were recently planted. Okay? These are, where are these? Memorial, okay? Veterans Memorial Drive. And these were also newly planted. Okay? And you can already see they're dying because of this disease. And like I said, this is a disease, a phytoplasma, that is transmitted by plant hoppers. So what do plant hoppers do?
They hop.
They hop. They can also fly short distance. So if you're going to plant more palms next to the dead ones, what are the leaf hoppers going to do? They're going to hop and fly, go there, and be happy. Right? Because you gave them more food. They don't have to struggle in order to survive. Okay? I always joke about this Louisiana, like if I give you an option to go someplace nice, where would you like to go? Now, don't take me wrong. I've been living in this state for 16 years. I love it. Okay? I don't think I can go and live in New York. I went there a couple of times. It was not good. Anyways, where would you like to go?
Italy. Italy.
Canada. Okay.
No, Italy.
Italy.
Italy. Oh, I don't think we have budget for that. It's expensive. I can tell you that from personal experience. We are trying to go to India this December, and I had to buy the airline tickets, and for 4 tickets, $12,000. And my credit card declined it twice. Even after calling them that I'm making this purchase, they were like, no, it's too much, too much. So I was pushing those buttons when I'm on the phone. I said, this is me, look. But yeah, it's expensive. But you ask the same question to a pathogen, where would they like to go? They would like to come to Louisiana. And why? There's a reason behind that. Because we have longer growing seasons, okay? And our weather is what? Hot and humid. Remember that. That's the new state, like Bayou State, now hot and humid state. And they come here as a guest, and they become a pest. They don't leave. Okay? And we are so generous, we give them free buffet. All they can eat, right? They don't have to pay for it. So all the diseases, even the insect pests, they like to have high humidity, high temperature. Now when the temperature is high, their life cycle shortens. And when the life cycle shortens, they have more generations per year. And that will make it worse when you have an insect transmitted disease like this. Okay? This is the lethal transient vector. It's very small insect. Okay? You won't be able to see it. You need a microscope to look at it. So this is the current distribution. We have this in this area, and then we have Iberia and West Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge parishes that are positive for this disease now. So this disease is also spreading. Not at the same like boxwood dieback, but it is spreading. Control, with my experience, once you have a disease problem, you can't control it. You can manage it to a point where you don't see a lot of symptoms. Okay? But once you have that problem in the landscape, you will notice that you have the problem. Maybe your neighbors may not notice it because you're hiding something, right? But if you're trying to manage this problem, it can be an expensive event to manage this problem. Okay? That OTC is an injection that goes in the trunk of that infected palm. It can be expensive depending on how many palms or how big the palm enthusiast you have. Okay? I have one homeowner in Baton Rouge. They were like, what should I do? I said, well, look, if you cut them down, that's going to cost you money. Okay? If you start doing the treatment, that is going to cost you a lot of money. So choice is yours. Okay? And they were like, okay, we're going to let them die, and then once they die, then we're going to cut them back. Because removing one of those myriad palms from your backyard is going to be costly. Okay? This is my last disease called Phytophthora root rot. So the symptoms of this, the reason I'm showing this disease today is, remember the 2016 flooding that we had? Okay? After that, once we started receiving a lot of live oak samples that were declining, okay? And what we found out that we have Phytophthora on those live oaks. It never happened before. So our suspicion is that moving water moved a lot of inoculum around, and those live oaks were stressed out already because of hurricanes, and now they are more susceptible to this problem. So my current student who just finished, so she did a survey on campus. We have a lot of live oaks on campus, if you ever want to come. But we have a lot of wall moss there too now. Okay? Have you heard about wall moss? Okay. If you don't have it, good. If you have it, buy a new house. So she did a survey of about a little over 1,000 live oaks on campus, and about 70% of them had Phytophthora root rot, and they're declining. Okay? There are other factors that can also contribute to that, but this is a real disease and a real problem. So I always like to show this picture. How many of you are professional landscapers? It's not a test, just okay. Now, Phytophthora root rot is a soil-borne disease. That means it can stay in the soil in the essence of the host. So, what does this picture tell you about a soil-borne disease? So, what happened in this picture? There's a story behind that I always like to tell. If you look, now think outside the box, okay? Work like a detective. If you look at these two,
right there.
if you look at these two, do they look same in size?
Yep.
They look different, right? This looks like older, well-groomed and everything. How about this one? It's like newly planted. Why this is a new plant here? What happened to the previous one? Died. Why? Because it is Phytophthora. So what we did, we took out the dead one, we saw a hole, right? We planted another one in there. By the time you start seeing symptoms on this is already infected now. If you look in the back, that's already infected. Okay? In this case, if this was kind of like really interesting, the bed was only like 3 feet wide, concrete on this side, concrete on this side, and then you have a live oak tree in the center. What's going to happen to those azaleas? They're going to decline slowly, slow death, right? We don't want to do that. These were in the landscape, those boxwoods were in the landscape for about 3 months, okay? And now they're already showing the symptoms. Now, see this disease, boxwood dieback and Phytophthora rot, they look sisters, okay? They are very close like in the symptoms, but they're caused by 2 different separate group of pathogens, okay? One is a swab bomb. This is not even a pathogen. It is a fungal-like microorganism, okay? The other one is a true pathogen. So in this case, you can tell that those boxwoods were pre-infected when they were planted. Why? This Phytophthora has a wide host range. So if it was in the soil here, your crepe myrtle will be the first one to go. Your, what's that, Japanese stew? That will be the second one to go. And this flex lily will be gone by now. Okay? This picture tells you that only one species is infected, but that Phytophthora has a wide host range, so you brought it before it was in the garden. So you brought something pre-infected. So when you have something like this, I always recommend, especially the commercial landscapers, that buy something that looks healthy. Even then you can have that problem, but you want to scout them for some time before you plant them. Okay? You want to keep them in a quarantine zone. If you start seeing the symptom, that means that lot is infected. Unfortunately, in this day, you can't trace back where it came from. Okay? Because once the landscaper puts an order in, those companies are going to get boxwoods from different sources, put them together, and ship it to you. Okay? This can also cause a sloughing of the roots. Okay? This is very diagnostic of this disease. If you have a good hand lens, you can see those reddish brown lesions on the roots. Okay? Let's stop over here. I don't have enough time. But this is another problem that we are facing now called large patch. Okay? It is becoming a major issue. It was known as brown patch. The name changed from brown to large. I don't know why. The only difference is if this pathogen is causing symptoms on cool season turf grass, it's called brown patch. If it is causing symptoms here in Louisiana on warm season turf grass, it's called large patch. I think it's the size of that patch that makes it large. Okay? So brown patch or large patch, I don't care what name you go by it, but large patch is a new name for the. We plant pathology, sometimes we don't have time to do anything, we just start changing names to keep it alive. Okay? But it's the same pathogen, okay? In this case, if you try to add nitrogen to this affected turf grass, it's going to make it worse. Because nitrogen will promote the vegetative growth of that turf grass, and this pathogen is only a foliar pathogen. It doesn't kill the roots of that turf grass. So if you have more food, they don't need to go anywhere. They won't stop from producing those symptoms. Okay? Let's quickly do take-off patch. If somebody tells you that this is a disease problem, I won't agree with them. Okay? take all patch, the organism can stay on healthy turf grass without any issue. Okay? It can stay on those stolons. You can see it growing fine, not causing any symptoms. But when the same turf grass goes under some kind of stress, that's when you start seeing these empty patches like that. As the name indicates, take all patch, it is a root rot pathogen, so you won't have any roots. You will have some roots, but you don't have any root hair that absorbs water and nutrients from the soil. Okay? But this is that mycelium. Okay? If you have a good hand lens, not that magnifying glass, a good hand lens, and you look at some of those green stolons, you can see that those threads of mycelium without. Give you an example here in Canada, the Saints practice field. They brought in take all patch on the Bermuda grass, and they were applying. Oh my goodness! I looked at their list of fungicides that they were applying every week. I was like, seriously? And those fungicides are expensive, very expensive, but it won't go away. Okay? In order to manage this problem, you have to reduce those stresses. You have to take care of those stresses before you rely on those chemicals. Okay? If you just based on the chemicals, you can't get rid of this disease. Okay? All right, that's all I had. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Have you seen any successful landscapers either charging extra for the landscapes to pre-treat or post-treat on a routine schedule? Or those landscapes like wood by copper and other diseases?
Usually I don't recommend, if you don't see a disease, I don't recommend any fungicides. Okay? But if you had a disease in the past, definitely then you can try having the preventative application. Okay? But again, if you miss the time of application or your application, like in take all patch, you have a lot of soil compaction. So you need to take care of that before you even do the preventative treatment of those fungicides. You can do it, but professionally I don't recommend doing it because that's extra chemical you're putting in the soil on that plant, and there is a high probability that if you keep on doing that, those pathogens may become resistant to those fungicides. We have seen one with, it was called azoxystrobin, Maxide Mule Action Disease Killer. People use it so much, we already started seeing the large patch resistant cultures from all over the state. So, yes?
How do you reduce the stress? I mean, what's the procedure for reducing the stress?
So in case of like, let's say pH, soil pH, you have to amend the soil pH, okay? Those grasses have a certain requirement that you need to look for, and then based on that, have soil analysis done. Soil compaction, you can do vertical cutting, okay? Those spikes don't work. We have tried them, those spikes don't work. So if you're not a commercial landscaper, you may have to hire somebody to do those things for you. For a homeowner or a home client, it's very tough to do it on your own. Yes. Well, thank you so much for your attention.